Hi everyone, Sue Matsuki here with another Nightlife Exchange, Sue's Muse. Today I have a muse from DC, from the DC area. She's actually the head and one of the movers and shakers down in the DC cabaret scenes and the cabaret community. Please welcome Heather Frank. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Sue. It's great to be with you.
So catch me up on all the to-dos down in DC and what's going on and who's doing what. I know I saw one of the folks is coming up here to do a show and you're coming up to do a show. So how's that going down there with your community?
Christy Trapp was who's one of our members was just up, and I think she's coming back with her show, The Tender Trap, which is her take on Frank Sinatra.
Mhm.
And then I'll be there on October 22nd at Downtown Mama with my appreciation of Blossom Dearie, Dear Blossom.
Tell me about Blossom. How did you come to know her work? Why Blossom? Because I mean, we all love her up here. She was a mainstay at Danny's Skylight Room right across from Don't Tell Mama, which is where you're going to bring the show. Tell me how that relationship developed and how you even know she was on the map.
Without knowing who it was, I certainly heard her music when I was growing up. My mom was a pianist, and she was my first music director. I was so lucky to grow up with a mom who could play for me and change keys on demand. So I'm kind of spoiled. And so I had heard a lot of that music, but I didn't really know singers' names necessarily. And then when I was in my early 30s, I was singing at a place in San Francisco. And the band leader said to me, I really like your sound. Has anyone ever told you you sound like Blossom Dearie? And I said, who's Blossom Dearie? Because I didn't know. And but then I was really intrigued and I started learning more about her. And as soon as I heard her voice, I knew that I knew that voice, but I really didn't know very much about her. But I definitely started listening, with a lot of interest in how she does things, why she does things. I talked to my mom a little bit about it at the time. In fact, Blossoms,
Did your mom know who Blossom was?
she absolutely did. She
Cool.
absolutely did. I mean, she was a musician. She grew up in the plains of Manitoba, and her first job was playing sheet music at the Hudson's Bay Company in Winnipeg,
Oh.
and she got to meet Duke Ellington, who's of course our Washington jazz icon, one day, and she collected all the records. So she definitely did know her, knew her music, admired her as a pianist. They actually shared some admiration society. Errol Garner was my mother's favorite, so I know that he was one of Blossom's favorites too. So I
Absolutely.
just started, incorporating some of her songs into things that I was doing. And I did get to see her in Toronto, of all places, in the late 90s. And that was amazing to get to spend time with her. And I mean, I met her. She was such a great appreciator of her audience and fans and would stay after every show to sell merch and get to know people. So I'm so happy that that happened for me, that I did get to see her.
It's
uh,
funny, I absolutely hear a vocal tone and quality in even your speaking voice that sounds like Blossom. She was a soft, gentler, almost had like a little girl sound to her, which Ella Fitzgerald also did for many, many years when she first
yes.
started out, had that younger jazz, younger voice sound. Now, Blossom has a lot of collaborations, one of which was with Dave Frischberg. She did a lot of Frischberg tunes and stuff. Are you going to incorporate some of those moments in the show?
I am, and I it was hard to choose. I mean, I think they're not all the songs are long, and some of them are excerpts. So, but there are a lot of songs, and so I wanted to have a good representation. She was in her later years a songwriter as well
Right.
as a singer and interpreter. Although I think she's best known as an interpreter. But one of the things that she really created around herself in starting in the early 70s was a community of lyricists that she loved writing with. One of them was Johnny Mercer, and one of those songs is in the show. And then of course she had people who wrote for her, and that includes Dave Frischberg. But she really, even in her early years when she first came to be in New York, she was working during the day as a hat model.
Oh, I didn't
um,
know that.
yeah, yeah.
Really?
She actually, and she was also a girl singer with Woody Herman's band in particular. And she was starting out, and she knew all of those jazz guys. She would hang out with Gil Evans in his apartment. He had a sort of salon going on. She was great friends with Miles Davis. He really reached out to her at a point in her life when she'd lost recording contract and had her, play on the bill with him at the Village Vanguard. She knew Bill Evans, who also loved her style of playing. And Dizzy Gillespie was also a really close friend who kind of held her hand when her former husband passed away. And so she was in those conversations about the future of contemporary music in the 1950s. And I think in a lot of ways, she doesn't get enough credit for the kind of innovator she was.
She really was, yeah.
But she decided in the 70s, she's like, I'm going to do things my own way. She was recorded those songs that she wrote with Johnny Mercer, but also Mariah Blackwolf, Jim Council, and we'll never know because we weren't there, and the people who were there, are private. And so I certainly don't. She was a very private person. She never wanted a biography. But the things that I have been able to research and learn of, it's kind of mystical how she did things the way she did them, but she definitely had a point of view, and she was very dedicated to it. Of course, I love, as we all do, the Blossom Dearie Agreement, which was her writer. She wanted to do her shows early in the evening if she could. She wanted to have complete silence. Dave told me a funny story that when he was playing with her.
Yeah, David Silliman is one of the musicians on the gig, and David Silliman is a gentleman I work with all the time, and he actually was part of Blossom's band. So when you had mentioned this to me years ago, I said, "Oh, you have to talk to Silliman," because
and I did, and then and that was so gracious of you to introduce us. So we did talk, and I got to know him a little bit, and I'm thrilled that he's going to be able to play for this gig, because it's just a real link to that time with her. But he told me a funny story that when she was playing at Danny's Skylight Room, somebody was using their cutlery a little too enthusiastically, and she stopped the show and pointed at him and said, "I already have a drummer." So, she was clear about how she wanted to do things. And I really, that's again, like, as I got to know about her better, I see parallels in my own life and viewpoint about how I like to do things, about my experiences, and seeing that, gosh, you know what, this isn't working. How do I hone in on what's authentically me and what matters the most, and pivot to something that's going to be more successful and satisfying? And she definitely did that all her life.
It's funny, for someone who didn't know much about Blossom, you certainly went down the rabbit hole in your research.
I did.
This is what I, as a reviewer, as an interviewer, as everything I am on the planet, a singer, a producer, this is what I look for when I go to a cabaret show. I want someone to be able to be on stage and talk to me like you're talking to me right now, with full knowledge of whoever it is you're paying tribute to, rather than scripting something and looking up going, okay, where am I in the script? When you know your subject matter, when you know this person, which clearly you do, it makes the show that much more personal in relation to how did she affect your life. If this isn't just she sang here in 1942 and she sang here in 1950, So I appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to the show. We mentioned musicians, so you're also working with another person I adore, because I've worked with him for 31 years. Gregory Terorian will be on piano, and the incomparable and the wonderful Tom Hubbard is on bass. So you have a wonderful trio that will do you and Blossom justice.
Yes.
Ask Dave on stage ask Dave to do one story, because he does a great Blossom.
I know that, and I'm hoping that he will. And I have to say, one of the interesting things about this show is that Blossom Dearie was both an incredible jazz pianist as well as a singer. And I am not an incredible jazz pianist for sure. So I'm so grateful to have this partnership with Gregory. And we're definitely not trying to, imitate her or any of those things, but it does take two to bring you a Blossom Dearie show. So I'm so happy to have Gregory's collaboration, and
he adores her too,
knowledge.
which is a big plus. When your musicians love your subject matter, you can feel it on stage, and you will feel it on stage, because that team is is amazing to work with. So
I'm really looking
Don't Tell
forward to
Mamas.
it.
Yes.
It's a
How
Don't
did
Tell
you?
Mamas. It is my solo New York debut. So I'm very excited about that. And I I love to share the story of someone who wasn't just a girlish voice that we all
Right.
connect to, but a real force in music. And also, I think she was the first American woman to start her own record label. She had a lot of
I was going to
chutzpah.
say,
Yeah.
what was her, not so much singing, but her overall superpower? Was it a business savvy? Was it her forthrightness? Was it her asking for what she wanted? Was it authenticity? Was it a combination? What do you think was her superpower that made her be the first female recording artist and got her to where she was in the jazz and cabaret community?
I think that there's a few things. One is she was the only daughter in her family. She was also the only child of her parents' marriage. She had older brothers. Her parents had both been widowed, and she was an adored person from the moment that she popped into the world. In April and Blossom Time, which is how she got her name. And I think she had that foundation going into it of I can do anything and people I need will be around me and help me. And she found that in her community of jazz musicians when she was just starting out. But I think that she got knocked around as we all do,
Mhm.
no matter what we do. But I think for her, she really felt that in order to be the artist that she wanted to be and to be true to her own vision, she was going to have to do things herself. And that's why she started the record label. She wanted to present her music, her ideas, her way for audiences that appreciated her and to collaborate with people that she felt were kindred spirits.
Mhm.
And I think that's really the secret to it. A lot of the recordings that she did early on, we'll never really know again, like how much input she had into those arrangements or not. But I truly don't think she ever did anything that she really didn't want to do. And when she got to that point in her life, which Suzanne Braun Levine, who was one of the editors of Ms. Magazine at the very beginning, wrote a book called The FU 50s. And I think that when Blossom reached that point in her life, she was like, I'm going to start my own record label. I'm going to market my own music. I'm going to sing when I want to, sing and play when I want to sing and play, where I want to do it, for who I want to do it. And that was how she did it. And she had a really lovely life.
It's interesting because Sheila Jordan, who just passed, and Keely Smith, they were of that same era and ilk and had that same kind of tenacious backbone because they were women in a man's world of
Yeah.
jazz and really
Yeah.
trying to claw their way into the community. I kind of think that Blossom gravitated into Danny's Skylight Room and Cabaret because of her persnicketiness, because she didn't want, she wanted to be heard and listened to. And unlike the jazz clubs where people were smoking and talking and you were background music, I think Cabaret afforded her to be a jazz singer under the Cabaret roof, an umbrella, to get the circumstance that she wanted to be heard. Do you agree
Yes,
with
and
that?
yes, absolutely. And it's interesting that you point out the time frame and the fact that she did a concert at Carnegie Hall, um, and it was Anita O'Day, and I'm so embarrassed I can't think of the male singer. Oh well, but anyway, it was called
That's a product of our age. We'll
it,
just
it
blame our
was
age.
it was called I remember the women.
Yeah.
It was called the Jazz Singers. And after that, she consciously considered herself a concert artist. Now
Mhm.
she played in plenty of nightclubs until the end of her life, but she did say like this is what she wanted. She wanted to have that communion with her audience. She didn't want any extraneous noise, no babies, thank you.
Mhm.
She wanted to do things on her own terms. Absolutely, she was strong.
Yeah. Winding down this little quickie interview, and I really appreciate you doing this
I'm so
with
grateful.
us.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, in what ways what qualities of hers, and in what ways do you think you're like her?
I also like to do things my own way in my own time. And I feel so connected to her choices. Um, I also there's some very funny things that I'm not going to talk about in the show because show would be too long. But we have a lot of things in common that are just kind of, funny coincidences. We both lived in London at the same time. I was 11, so we didn't really hang out together. She's buried in my hometown of Falls Church, Virginia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm not, as I said, there's no biography. I haven't had a chance to really sit down with her family, which I'd love to someday, but and they run Daffodil Records, but I'm not sure why that's the case. But I think also, growing up with a pianist for a mom, and my first playground was sitting under the piano with my dolls, and I think that's so much for me what I connect with her in terms of her as a pianist. But I do think it's the sureness of decisions that you make. And again, also, I like her. I have not been a musician my whole. I have not been a musician my whole life. I've always sung, but I've really not been a musician my whole life, like most of my colleagues that I've come to have in cabaret, and I'm grateful for that. And I think that I feel with her that an admiration of her bravery. And so I find a lot of space in there for myself to say, gosh, you know what? She did this. I'm going to do the things that I want to do, even though they're a little surprising.
It's a beautiful thing to do a tribute show to someone that actually you feel is a role model in some ways and also gave you the opportunity to spread your wings because she could spread hers. So everyone, you're going to want to be at Don't Tell Mama on Wednesday, October 22nd at 7 o'clock. Below this interview, I'll have a direct link to ticket sales and all the information. But if you loved Blossom, you're going to love Heather because I know Heather, and Heather is a beautiful soul, as you've just witnessed in this interview. And I can only imagine the take you're going to give us on this wonderful, wonderful talent and this beautiful woman. So thank you for honoring her. And we really look forward to seeing you here in New York in October.
Thank you,
Um,
Sue. Thank you
Appreciate
for
you being
doing
with us
this.
today.
Thank you.
Until next time, everyone, Sue Matsuki for Sue's Muse Nightlife Exchange. We'll see you the next time. Take care. Have a great day, hun.
Thanks. Bye.